What happens when someone builds a company from nothing, only to have it taken away by their own family in the middle of a board meeting right in front of investors and executives? When years of hard work are erased in a few sentences, and the silence from the people who should defend them becomes the loudest betrayal of all. People always say, family would never betray you. But when power and control come into play, is that really true? When the truth is twisted right in front of everyone, do you stay silent to keep the peace, or speak up to protect what's yours? Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you're tuning in from. It's always amazing to see where our stories travel. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next twist in this journey. And now, let's hear her out. I'm Calix Varelli, 29, founder of Varelli Systems, a logistics tech company headquartered in Chicago. The kind of company people now call inevitable. The kind investors like to say they saw coming. They didn't. I did. The boardroom on the 47th floor is all glass and skyline. Chicago stretches out in every direction, sharp and clean like a promise. Inside, it's all polished wood leather chairs, a long table that reflects the overhead lights like it's trying to stay neutral. Quarterly numbers glow on the screen behind me. Revenue curves, expansion forecasts, the language I've spent years learning how to speak fluently. Around the table sit the people who matter, board members, major investors, Mason Hale, my COO, the first person who ever said yes to me when there was nothing to say yes to. And then my parents, minor shareholders on paper, influential in ways paper doesn't measure, and Rowan, my older brother. Perfect posture, tailored suit. The kind of confidence that comes from never having to build anything from the ground up. I knew something was off before I even walked in. Emails over the past few weeks hadn't felt right. Threads I should have been included in weren't. Decisions that should have crossed my desk didn't. Subtle shifts. Nothing loud. Nothing you could point at and say, there, that's the moment. But enough to leave a taste in the air. Metallic. Familiar. I brought a leather folder with me. Set it down beside my chair like it didn't mean anything. It meant everything. The meeting starts the way it always does. Clean, structured, predictable. I'm halfway through presenting our expansion plan, mid-sentence, mid-slide, when Rowan stands up. Not on the agenda, not invited to speak. He doesn't look at me, doesn't ask. He just stands, lifts his glass of water like he's about to give a toast at a wedding, not interrupt a board meeting. Before we go any further, he says, voice smooth, practiced. I just want to thank Mom and Dad for believing in me and for officially handing me the company. The words don't land all at once. They ripple, quiet, then heavy. A few heads turn. Someone shifts in their chair. No one speaks. And then he adds, with a small, almost polite smile, Calix won't be involved in operations moving forward. There it is. Clean, surgical, erased in 2 sentences. The room goes still, not loud, still. The other kind. The kind where people are thinking very carefully about what not to say. Across the table, Mason's brow tightens. Just a fraction. He doesn't interrupt. Not yet. A couple of board members glance at each other. Confusion, not confrontation. No one wants to be the first to challenge something that sounds official. I don't look at Rowan. I look at my parents. My mother adjusts her napkin like we're at dinner, not in a room where something irreversible just happened. My father studies the grain of the table like it might explain itself if he stares long enough. Neither of them meets my eyes. Neither of them corrects him. And in that silence, I understand something with absolute clarity. This wasn't spontaneous. This was agreed, planned, timed. Not just to remove me, but to do it here. In front of everyone who matters, in a room where reputation carries more weight than truth. I don't feel shock, not the way people think. I feel confirmation, because somewhere in the last few weeks I already knew, just not how far they were willing to go. Rowan keeps talking, expanding the narrative, talking about leadership, about next phases, about stability, words that sound solid, responsible, safe, words that don't belong to him. And as he speaks, I realize what this really is. It's not just a takeover, it's a rewrite. He's not trying to take the company from me. He's trying to take the story. To stand in front of this room and make it sound like I was never the one who built it. I reach for my glass, but stop halfway. Instead, my fingers brush the edge of the leather folder beside me. Still closed, still quiet. For now. A single thought settles, and steady and sharp, they're telling a story about me, and they're hoping I won't speak in it. 6 years earlier, there was no boardroom, no skyline, no one watching. Just a narrow office in South Loop that smelled like dust and old wiring with a window that didn't fully close, and a desk I bought secondhand from a guy who didn't ask questions. That desk, solid wood, scratched uneven, was the first real thing I owned in that space. Everything else was borrowed. Time, money, energy. I was 23 when I started Varelli Systems. No co-founder, no safety net. Just a loan I signed for myself and a belief that I could build something that didn't exist yet. In the beginning, I did everything. Cold calls that went nowhere. Contracts I wrote and rewrote until the language sounded confident enough to convince someone older, richer, more experienced than me to take a chance. Logistics deals. I managed manually because we didn't have the infrastructure yet. Nights spent tracking shipments and solving problems that didn't care what time it was. There were weeks I didn't know if I could make payroll. Weeks where I paid my team first and told myself I'd figure out my part later. I always did. Barely. I learned fast because I had to. I taught myself enough law to understand the contracts I was signing. Enough finance to keep us from collapsing under our own growth. Enough leadership to make people believe I knew where we were going, even when I was still mapping it out in real time. Mason Hale walked into that office during one of those early weeks. He listened more than he talked, asked the kind of questions that didn't waste time. At the end of the conversation, he didn't ask what the salary was. He asked, "Where do you see this in 5 years?" No one had asked me that before, not like that. He stayed, first hire, first real ally. Over time, he became more than that, the person who could hold the system together when I was stretched too thin, the one who saw the structure before it fully existed. We built it together, but it was mine to start. That mattered. It mattered in ways I didn't realize would be tested later. When the company started to stabilize, when revenue stopped feeling like a miracle and started feeling like a pattern, that's when my parents began to show interest. At first it was small, advice, suggestions, occasional introductions. It felt supportive, helpful even. They framed it as pride, as wanting to be part of what I was building. I didn't question it. Why would I? They were my parents. But slowly the language shifted. From "what do you think" to "we should consider." From suggestions to expectations. They invested a small amount, nothing close to what I had already risked, but it came with a disproportionate sense of ownership. Meetings started happening without me. Decisions were discussed in side conversations I wasn't part of. At first I told myself it was just growing pains, that I was still learning how to manage expansion, that this was what scaling looked like. Then Rowan came back. Before that, his life had been inconsistent. Jobs that didn't stick. Projects that didn't last. He was always figuring things out. When he entered the company, it was framed as temporary. Strategic support. Fresh perspective. Family helping family. I said yes. Of course I did. Because at that point, I still believed something simple. That family showing up meant they were on my side. Rowan started small. Meetings, observations, occasional input. Then his name started appearing more often, on internal documents, on email threads. His role, undefined at first, began to expand in ways that weren't formally discussed. And then something changed, not all at once, but enough that I could feel it. Approvals that used to come to me didn't. Documents circulated without my review. My parents' signatures started showing up where mine used to be the final word. I noticed it. Of course I noticed it, but I explained it away. They're trying to help. They want the company to succeed. This is what support looks like. I told myself those things because the alternative was harder to face, that this wasn't support, it was structure, and not the kind I designed, the kind that was forming around me, one where decisions were being redistributed, quietly, strategically. And one day, looking at a document where Rowan's name sat in a place it had never belonged before, the thought finally formed clear, undeniable. This isn't family helping anymore. This is family repositioning. I didn't say it out loud, not yet. But from that moment on, I stopped trusting the surface of things, because underneath the language of support, something else was being built, and it wasn't for me. 3 weeks before that meeting, the shift stopped being subtle. It stopped feeling like intuition and started looking like evidence. At first, it was just emails. Threads about strategy expansion routes, vendor restructuring, internal leadership, changes circulating without me. Not forwarded later, not summarized, just missing. I told myself it was an oversight. Then it happened again and again. Not random, not occasional, consistent enough to form a pattern. I started paying closer attention, reading timestamps, noticing who was included and who wasn't, watching how decisions were framed after the fact as if they had already been agreed upon somewhere else. Then I saw the document. It was buried in a shared drive folder labeled Executive Updates, a file I should have approved before it ever reached that directory. I opened it without thinking. Halfway down the page, under a section outlining leadership structure, there was my name. And next to it, a signature. Mine. Except it wasn't. Same initials, same style. But something about it felt off. The angle was wrong. The pressure uneven. Close enough to pass a glance, not close enough to survive scrutiny. I didn't react immediately. I just stared at it. Because in that moment, everything I had been explaining away started lining up, not as coincidence, as design. I didn't confront anyone. Not Mason, not my parents, not Rowan. Instead, I went back, all the way back. I pulled every document I could access, incorporation papers, early equity agreements, the first contracts I had signed when the company was still small enough that every decision felt personal. I went through email archives, years of them, late-night exchanges, confirmations, language that couldn't be rewritten without leaving a trace. And then I found it. A file labeled Interim Structure Proposal, dated 2 weeks prior. I opened it slowly this time. There it was, Rowan Varelli, Interim CEO. No discussion, no vote, no signature from me authorizing anything close to that. Just a title sitting on a page like it had always belonged there. I leaned back in my chair and let the silence settle. Not shock, recognition. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't someone overstepping by accident. It was organized, layered, built over time. I reached out to Elliot Graves the next morning. Corporate attorney, precise. The kind of person who didn't waste words or soften conclusions. I sent him everything, the altered documents, the email threads, the discrepancies. We met 2 days later. He didn't start with reassurance. He started with facts. There's enough here to suggest an attempt to reassign control, he said, flipping through the pages I had brought, without proper authorization. I watched his finger pause over the signature, and this, he added, this could be interpreted as fraudulent. The word didn't hit like a shockwave. It landed like confirmation. I asked him one question. Can they take it? He didn't hesitate. No. Simple. Clean. Final. Legally, the company was mine. Always had been, and whatever they were trying to build around that fact wouldn't hold. I left his office with something I hadn't had in weeks. Clarity and a choice. I could stop it immediately, call a meeting, confront them privately, shut it down before it reached anyone else. Or I could wait. Let them move forward. Let them believe their version of the story would stand, and choose the moment when it would matter most to speak. I chose to wait, Not because I was unsure, but because I was certain. I wanted the truth to exist in the same space they were trying to erase me from, not behind closed doors, not in rewritten summaries, in the open, where it couldn't be adjusted later. So I prepared. I printed everything, every document that mattered, every agreement that traced ownership back to me, every email that confirmed what they were now trying to deny. I placed them into a leather folder, closed it, set it aside, and from that point on, I stopped reacting. I observed. I listened. I let the pieces fall into place exactly the way they intended, because I understood something clearly now. They were counting on one thing, not the strength of their position, not the legality of their actions, my silence. And I made a decision that felt quieter than it was powerful. I wouldn't give them that. If they wanted a stage, I would bring the truth onto it. Back on the 47th floor, Rowan is still standing, still speaking like nothing about this is uncertain, like the decision has already been accepted, like I've already agreed. I don't interrupt him. I don't correct him. I sit there, hands still, eyes steady, and let him continue. Because what he's doing now is more valuable than anything I could say too early. He's building his version of the story, and every word matters. He moves into what he calls the next phase, talks about leadership transitions, stability, the need for stronger direction as the company scales. He says it like it's obvious, like it's responsible, like it's already been decided by people who know better. Our family has always been deeply invested in this company. He continues pacing slightly now, owning the room in a way that would almost be impressive if it weren't built on something hollow. And we believe this transition will position us for long-term success. Us, not me, not him, us. He keeps using that word. Everything we've built, the foundation we've created, the direction we've agreed on. And I realize exactly what he's doing. He's dissolving me into the background, turning something I built into something collective, something shared, something that can be reassigned without it looking like theft. He doesn't mention the early years, doesn't mention the South Loop office, the contracts, the nights I didn't go home. He talks like the company appeared fully formed, shaped by a group effort, and in that version, I'm optional. Around the table, I see it happening. Not acceptance, but hesitation. A few board members glance at me waiting. Others shift toward Rowan, drawn in by the confidence of someone who sounds like he belongs in charge. No one interrupts. No one asks the question that's sitting right there. Because this is the kind of room where people don't move first unless they're sure. And right now, Rowan sounds sure. I let my gaze move just slightly. Mason is watching me now. Not Rowan. Me. He doesn't speak, but there's a question in his expression. Are you going to let this stand? Across from him, my parents remain exactly as they were. Still. Controlled. Silent. They don't confirm what Rowan is saying, but they don't deny it either. And that silence does more than any statement could. It legitimizes everything. Because in this room, absence of contradiction feels like agreement. I feel the weight of it then, not the announcement, the expectation. They expect me to make this easy, to nod, to redirect the conversation, to protect the company's image, to protect the family, to keep everything clean and contained. I can feel it in the way people avoid direct eye contact for too long, in the way no one pushes back, in the way the room seems to hold its breath, not waiting for the truth, but hoping it won't get messy. Part of me wants to stand, to shut it down immediately, to take control back before another sentence leaves his mouth. But that part of me is exactly what they're counting on. A reaction, emotion, something they can frame as instability, as proof. So I stay still. I let him finish. I let every word land. I let the room settle into the version he's presenting, and I allow something else to settle inside me, a clarity that cuts through everything else. This isn't just about control of the company, it's about pressure, public pressure. Put me in a room like this, Surround me with people who matter, rewrite the story out loud, and count on the fact that I won't challenge it in front of everyone, because doing that would be uncomfortable, disruptive, risky. They don't need to win legally, they just need me to step back, to choose peace over truth, to stay quiet long enough for their version to become the only version. Rowan slows, sensing he's reaching his conclusion. He looks around the table, confident again, like he's already crossed the finish line. And I let the silence stretch just a little longer, long enough for everyone to believe this might be over, long enough for the moment to feel settled. Then I make a decision. Not impulsive, not emotional, deliberate. I don't move yet, I don't speak yet. But I allow the room to think just for a second that I might accept this, because what comes next only works if they believe that. Rowan finishes speaking like he's just closed a deal. There's a brief pause, the kind that usually signals transition, someone moving on to the next slide, the next topic, the next safe part of the meeting. But no one moves. No one speaks. The room holds, and for a second, it almost feels like everything he said might just settle. Like it might become real simply because no one challenges it. That's the moment I've been waiting for. I reach for my glass, not quickly, not nervously, deliberately. I lift it, feel the cool surface against my fingers, and take a slow sip of water. It's not about thirst, it's about time, about rhythm, about taking control of the pace of the room without saying a word, the kind of pause that forces people to stay with you whether they want to or not. I set the glass down just as carefully. Then I look up, not at Rowan, not at the board, at my father, directly. It's the first time I've truly looked at him since Rowan stood up. And when I speak, my voice doesn't rise. It doesn't sharpen. It doesn't carry any of the emotion they were probably expecting. It's calm, clear. Should I tell them now? Or do you want to? The sentence lands differently than anything else that's been said in this room. Not loud, not aggressive, but final in a way that doesn't leave space for misunderstanding. For a moment, no one reacts. Then I see it. My father's expression breaks, just slightly, but enough. His eyes shift not toward me, but away from me. His mouth opens like he's about to respond, then closes again. He wasn't prepared for that question. Not here. Not like this. Across the table, Rowan's posture changes. It's subtle. A shift of weight. A tightening around his jaw. The kind of adjustment someone makes when the ground under them isn't as steady as they thought. The confidence doesn't disappear completely, but it's no longer effortless. Around us, the room recalibrates. Before they were listening. Now they're watching. Not waiting for a presentation to continue, but waiting for something to be revealed. The energy changes. It's no longer about accepting what was said. It's about questioning it. And I can feel it, every eye, every attention line, moving toward me. Just a few seconds ago, Rowan controlled the narrative. He defined the terms. He decided what this moment meant. Now he doesn't. I don't need to raise my voice. I don't need to prove anything yet. Because the moment has already shifted. All it took was a question, not even an answer, just an opening, and suddenly everything he said isn't solid anymore. It's conditional, fragile, dependent on what comes next. I let the silence stretch, not too long, just enough for it to settle into everyone, enough for them to realize this isn't over, not even close. Inside, I feel something unfamiliar, not anger, not panic, control, the kind that doesn't come from forcing anything, but from knowing exactly when to move. A single thought cuts through everything else. This story will not be told without me in it. I don't rush. That's the first thing. I don't fill the silence too quickly. I don't let it turn into chaos or emotion or something they can dismiss as reaction. I speak the way I've learned to speak in rooms like this, measured, structured, clear. I think there are a few things that need to be clarified. I say, still looking forward no longer just at my father, but at the room as a whole. No one interrupts, so I continue. I founded Varelli Systems when I was 23. There were no partners, no co-founders, no shared ownership at the time of incorporation. I don't elaborate, I don't dramatize, just facts. The original filings list me as the sole owner. That hasn't changed. A shift in the room, subtle but real. I can see it in the way one of the board members leans slightly forward, in the way another picks up a pen but doesn't write anything yet. I move on. My parents became involved later. They provided input, some financial support at a later stage, but they were not part of the founding structure. I pause there. Let it land, which means they don't have the legal authority to transfer ownership. This time, the reaction is more visible. A glance between two board members, a tightening in someone's posture, a change in the air that signals something is being reconsidered. I don't look at Rowan yet, not until I say his name. Rowan's role began after the company was already operational and stable. Now I turn, just slightly. His name does not appear on any of the foundational documents. There it is, clear, uncomplicated, and impossible to spin without effort. The room doesn't stay quiet this time. One of the board members, older, precise, the kind who doesn't speak unless it matters, leans forward. Can you clarify the process of this transition, he asks, choosing the word carefully, not aggressive, but pointed. Another voice follows. Was there a formal vote, documentation, legal review? The questions come not as attacks, but as requirements, standards, things that should exist if what Rowan claimed were legitimate. I don't answer immediately, because I don't have to. This part doesn't belong to me. It belongs to him. Rowan steps in, too quickly. That's being handled internally, he says a little sharper now. This is a family decision. Family. He uses the word like it should settle everything, like it should end the questions. It doesn't. If it affects governance, it's not just a family matter, the same board member replies calmly. Now the pressure is real. Rowan adjusts his stance. You're overcomplicating this, he says, looking at me now. Calix is exaggerating. We're just trying to move the company forward. I hold his gaze. I don't respond to the accusation, because it's not the point. What documentation supports the transition, someone else asks. That's the question that matters. And this time, Rowan doesn't have an immediate answer. He starts to speak, then redirects. It's in progress, he says. We're aligning things. Not a lie, not exactly, but not an answer. And in a room like this, that distinction matters. I see it happen. The moment the confidence he walked in with begins to thin, not gone, but no longer convincing on its own. Mason speaks then, for the first time since this started. Calix has been the sole operational lead since the beginning. He says, voice steady. Every major decision has gone through her. He doesn't look at me when he says it. He doesn't need to. It's not support. It's confirmation. And it lands heavier because of that. Rowan exhales sharper now. This is getting blown out of proportion, he says. We're talking about leadership direction, not ownership. But that's not true, and everyone in the room knows it now, because the questions have already moved past direction. They're sitting on authority, legitimacy, control. I don't interrupt him. I don't argue. I simply add one sentence. There are documents that clarify all of this. I don't reach for the folder. I don't open it. I just let the statement sit there. The effect is immediate, because now it's not just about what's been said, it's about what can be proven, and more importantly, what might be revealed. I see my father shift again, this time more visibly. His hand moves slightly toward the table, then stops. He knows what's in that folder, or at least he knows enough. Rowan doesn't. Not fully, and that difference matters. The room changes again. It's no longer a discussion. It's a threshold. Everyone understands that whatever happens next will define what this meeting actually becomes. A routine update, or something else entirely. I sit back slightly, not withdrawing, positioning. Because now I'm not reacting to what they've done. I'm deciding when to show it. And in that moment, I understand something with complete certainty. There's no going back from this. Not for them, not for me. If they wanted this to happen in front of everyone, then that's exactly where the truth will be. Out in the open, where no one can pretend they didn't see it. The room doesn't explode, it tightens. That's the difference. There's no shouting, no chaos, just a pressure that builds quietly like something about to give. No one is speaking now, not because there's nothing to say, but because everyone understands that whatever comes next will matter more than anything said so far. The board has shifted. I can see it in their posture, in the way they're no longer leaning back, no longer passive. They're engaged now, not as observers, as evaluators. Rowan is still standing, but something about him has changed. The ease is gone. He's still holding on to confidence, but now it feels forced, like something he's actively maintaining instead of something that comes naturally. My father hasn't looked at me, not once, and that tells me everything I need to know. I reach for the folder beside me, not quickly, not dramatically. I slide it across the table, not toward Rowan, toward my father. I don't look at anyone else, just him. You can explain it, I say, my voice even steady, or I will. I don't raise my tone. I don't need to, because the weight of that sentence doesn't come from how it's said. It comes from what it means. This isn't about presenting evidence. It's about forcing the truth into the open. My father hesitates, just for a second. Then he reaches forward. His fingers rest on the edge of the folder, like it's heavier than it should be. He opens it. The first few pages move quickly, too quickly, like he's trying to get through them before they can fully register. Incorporation documents, original filings, my name, alone. He turns another page. Equity agreements, no shared ownership, no transfer authority. Nothing that gives him or anyone else the right to do what Rowan just claimed had already been done. His pace slows, page by page. Careful now, deliberate. Then the emails, printed, dated, clear. His own words, acknowledging me as the sole owner, confirming it in language that doesn't leave room for reinterpretation. And finally, the discrepancies. Documents that had been altered, entries where Rowan's name appeared later layered into structures that didn't originally include him. Not clean, not consistent, not defensible. I watch it happen, not the reading, the realization. His shoulders drop, not all at once, gradually, like something inside him is losing the strength to hold itself up. The room is silent, but it's no longer uncertain. Now it's focused. One of the board members leans forward, eyes narrowing slightly, as he watches my father turn another page. Another shifts in their chair. "Can we see those?" someone asks. My father doesn't respond immediately. He closes the folder halfway, opens it again. And in that hesitation, everything becomes clear. Because hesitation doesn't exist when something is solid, only when it isn't. They need to be reviewed, he says finally, but his voice doesn't carry the authority it did before. It carries something else. Strain. That's not an answer. The same board member replies, still calm, but firmer now. Another voice joins in. If there's no valid transfer documentation, then the statement made earlier, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't have to. Everyone in the room already understands it. Mason speaks again this time, without waiting. Calix has maintained full operational control since the company was founded, he says. There's been no transition of authority in practice. It lands clean, direct, and it reinforces what the documents already show. Rowan steps in again. Too fast. That's not the point, he says sharper now. This is about direction, about leadership moving forward. But his voice is louder now, less controlled, and that shift is visible to everyone. You're misrepresenting what's happening, he adds, looking at me. I meet his eyes. I don't respond to the accusation, because the room has already moved past it. What documentation supports your claims, someone asks him. It's the same question as before, but now it carries weight. Now it demands an answer. Rowan opens his mouth, closes it, tries again. "We're aligning things internally," he says. "This is still being finalized. It sounds weaker this time, because now everyone knows what's in the folder, or at least enough to understand what isn't there. And yet you announced it as completed," another board member points out. "That's the moment. The one where everything shifts from uncertain to undeniable." Rowan's composure fractures. He exhales sharply. "This is getting blown out of proportion," he says. "Calix is twisting things. I'm not twisting anything I say. Finally cutting in. Not loudly, just clearly. I'm stating what's documented. That's it. No emotion, no escalation, just a line that closes the gap between argument and fact." My father finally speaks again, and when he does, he doesn't look at Rowan. He looks at the table, the company. He begins, then stops, tries again. The company is legally in Calix's name. There's a stillness that follows. Not surprise, confirmation. And any transfer, he continues more quietly now, would require her authorization. No one interrupts him. No one needs to, because that's the end of it. Not formally, not procedurally, but fundamentally. The truth is no longer implied. It's stated, out loud, in the room they chose. I don't feel a surge of victory, no satisfaction, just clarity, clean, unavoidable. Because this wasn't confusion, it wasn't miscommunication. They knew, and they chose to do it anyway. I don't stay to argue. There's nothing left to argue about. The moment has already resolved itself. The rest is process, legal, procedural, clean in a way this never was. I close the folder gently and pull it back toward me. Then I stand, not abruptly, not as a statement, just done. We can handle the rest through counsel, I say. No one objects. No one tries to stop me. Because everyone understands now this is no longer a family conversation. It never really was. I don't look at Rowan. I don't look at my parents. There's nothing there I need to see. I walk out of the room the same way I walked in, steady, controlled. But something has shifted, not in the room, in me. The elevator ride down is quiet, no thoughts competing for space, no replay of what just happened, just a sense of something settling. When the doors open, the air hits differently, cold, sharp, Chicago in full voice, cars passing, wind cutting between buildings, the sound of a city that doesn't pause for anything. I step outside, and for the first time that day, I take a full breath. Not because I couldn't before, but because I don't have to hold anything in place anymore. Behind me, the building stands exactly the same. Glass, steel, controlled. Inside, everything is still contained within that room, but out here, there's nothing containing me. In the weeks that follow, things unfold the way they always do, when the truth is documented. Rowan loses the position he tried to claim, not dramatically, not publicly, but definitively. The people who matter see what they need to see, and they adjust. My parents step back, not voluntarily, but because there's no longer a structure that allows them to stand where they were. Influence doesn't survive without legitimacy. The board restructures, clarifies authority, reinforces what should have never been unclear. Mason remains, stronger in his role now, not because of loyalty, because of consistency, because he was always where he said he was, and the company it stabilizes, not because nothing happened, but because what happened is now understood, clearly, without distortion. As for me, I don't feel like I won something. That's the part people expect, that sense of victory. It isn't there. What's there instead is something quieter, more permanent. I didn't just keep the company, I kept my place in it, my voice, my presence, the right to not be rewritten. And somewhere in all of that, I understand something I didn't fully see before. Silence isn't peace, it's permission. And family doesn't automatically mean fairness. A few days later, I find myself back in the South Loop. in that old building, the one with the office that started everything. The space is empty now, different tenant, different setup, but the bones are still the same. I walk and stand where the desk used to be, and for a moment I can see it again. The late nights, the uncertainty, the version of me that didn't know how any of this would turn out. I place my hand against the wall, not to hold on to it, just to remember. This is where it began. Not in a boardroom, not with approval, not with permission. And that matters, because it means something else, too. No one gave it to me, which means no one gets to take it. I stand there a little longer, then I turn and walk out, not looking back, because I don't need to. I already know what's mine, and I know something else now just as clearly. I didn't lose my family that day. I lost the illusion I had about them, and that was the only thing that needed to go. Sometimes the hardest part isn't losing something. It's realizing what was never truly yours to begin with. Not the company, not the success, but the version of family we believed would always stand with us. And maybe in moments like these, what we're really left with is something quieter, the chance to see clearly, to stand gently but firmly in our own truth, and to keep moving forward without carrying what was never ours to hold. In the end, stories like this aren't about winning or losing. They're about understanding, about learning where we draw the line between love and self-respect, between silence and honesty. And maybe they remind us that strength doesn't always look loud. It can look like calm, like clarity, like walking away with your dignity intact. If this story stayed with you in some way, you're always welcome here. You can subscribe and be part of a space where stories are shared, not judged. And if you feel like it, you can leave a few words in the comments. Sometimes even a small thought can mean more than we expect. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next story.